What's up guys, this is Jeff from Sorta Healthy, and today we're talking all about virtual personal training. Some things that we'll cover today are what exactly virtual personal training is, what we think the best setup for virtual personal training is, how to acquire virtual personal training clients, and no doubt we'll cover a few other virtual personal training things in this video too. Ultimately, I want this video to be a guide for personal trainers who are looking to get into virtual personal training because it's been something that has really helped me out this year. Before we get into the nitty-gritty today, all I ask is that you like the video and subscribe to the channel if you haven't done so already. This channel is a free resource to personal trainers, and by liking and subscribing, you're allowing me to make more free content for others in the fitness field. Thank you for the support, everyone. Now let's get into the video. Virtual personal training is personal training via webcam. It's very similar to in-person personal training, except all communication is done via webcam and microphone. You can do virtual personal training with one client or with multiple clients at the same time, just like you'd be able to do in-person personal training. I've been doing virtual personal training for a few years now. I started doing it when I had a client move away, and that client was way too far away to do in-person training, but they still wanted to stay training with me. For obvious reasons, over the past year, I have substantially increased the amount of virtual personal training that I do. In my studio, we currently do about 15 to 20 virtual personal training sessions, in addition to all the in-person personal training sessions that we do. It's been a great side source of revenue for us, and I'm sure it will continue to be so going forward. We've made a few other videos on virtual personal training, and not even that long ago, really. But I figured it was a good topic for us to revisit because I do feel like I've gotten a lot better at it over the past year, and I've learned a few new tricks along the way that could be useful to you. So what is the ideal setup for virtual personal training? When it comes to your setup, the simpler it is, the better off you'll be. At least that's been my experience so far. Make sure that you have a decent webcam and microphone. Almost any modern computer or cell phone is going to have both of those two things by default. But yeah, make sure you're all set to go with both of those two things. Equipment-wise, you should have a light set of dumbbells, standard resistance bands, mini bands, a stability ball, and a mat. If you have other things like a suspension trainer, aka a TRX, or BOSU, those things are cool and all, and may come in handy with a select few clients, but it will be rare for your clients to also have that equipment unless you've already told them to buy it. Most of the clients that you sign on for virtual personal training are going to have at least some of that basic equipment that we just described. All of that stuff is pretty cheap too, so if they are missing something like mini bands for instance, you can offer to buy it for them or at least show your client where they can purchase it for themselves. In addition to this basic equipment, the only other thing that I recommend that you have is a decent sized room for you to do your virtual personal training sessions in. It's ideal if your client can see your entire body when you're demonstrating exercises. I should say by no means is that bigger room necessary, but it can be helpful. So now that we've talked about the setup and the recommended equipment, let's talk about who virtual personal training is probably not as good for. Virtual personal training is not great for clients who are purely focused on gaining strength. While you can definitely gain strength via virtual personal training, in-person personal training is going to be the better option, assuming that your trainer is equally good for both types of training. To gain strength effectively, simply put, you need heavier weights. And there really isn't any way for you, the trainer, to simulate a barbell or heavier weights. So unless your virtual training client already has that barbell and heavier weights, your strength training just won't be as effective. Even if they did have that equipment, you still wouldn't be there to spot them for an exercise like a bench press, for instance. Now, none of this is to say that a strength-based client wouldn't still benefit from virtual personal training. If virtual personal training is the only option available, it could still be a good option to help maintain strength. Again, it's just not the best option to build strength if all options are available. I also don't think virtual personal training is the best option for people with moderate to severe orthopedic issues or balance issues. For these clients, the chances of injury are generally higher, and it can be harder to manage these clients via webcam. That being said, it's not impossible, and many clients who would fall into this category would still do very well with virtual personal training. So definitely take this one on a case-by-case basis. So who is virtual personal training good for? I mean, honestly, it's pretty good for everyone else. It's very good, in fact, I would say just as good as in-person training for clients with a little bit of exercise experience who are focused on weight loss. And considering that's probably the biggest demographic within all of personal training, well, yeah, that's a good thing. These clients tend to do very well with virtual personal training, and their results really shouldn't be any different than they would be if they were working with you in person. And of course, this is because weight loss is still very achievable, even if you're only working with lighter resistance and, of course, nutritional guidance. If your client does have a little bit of lifting experience, it definitely does make this whole process a little bit easier. This doesn't mean that you can't take a total beginner who's never even touched a dumbbell through virtual personal training sessions. Really all it means is that total beginner's first few sessions are probably going to be a little bit tougher, and it's going to require a little bit more coaching on your part in the very beginning. We've had a few clients now do their first personal training sessions virtually, and yeah, those first few sessions are tricky, but once you get past those, it does get a lot easier. Now let's cover how to get virtual personal training clients. For many of you, your virtual personal training clients will be clients that you worked with in person and switched to virtual sessions for whatever reason. And that's cool, nothing wrong with that. That's how I got almost all of my virtual personal training clients. Surprisingly, a number of those clients that switched to virtual sessions have stayed in virtual sessions even though my fitness facility has been back open now for quite a while. Let's say that you want to acquire even more virtual personal training clients though. So the first thing we need to do is set up accounts on Instagram and Facebook that we're going to use to get virtual clients. Second thing we need to do is figure out who our ideal client is. Then we also need to start molding our social media to attract that client. And this one requires a lot of research and work. I'm going to try and keep everything surface level for this video today. We did make a video where we took a deeper dive into this process recently. I'll show you guys where you can find that video in a second. Step 3, we have to create content that speaks to our ideal client. And we also want to insert personality into that content. Maybe your ideal client is a middle-aged guy who wants to get rid of their dad bod and get ripped. Post about 5 exercises that they should be doing to achieve that body could be helpful. It's also very important in this stage for your ideal client to get to know you, because let's be honest, lots of people put out quality content these days. So in addition to your quality content making you stand out, your personality should also make you stand out a little bit as well. Again, that way people actually want to work with you. Your post should include hashtags that your ideal client might be looking at or using. If I'm trying to work with dads who are trying to lose the dad bod and get ripped, I might put hashtag dadfit or hashtag fit with kids in my posts. Also make sure to put hashtag virtual personal training in your posts too. If you want to get virtual personal training clients, this could be very effective because virtual personal training search terms aren't super competitive right now, but they definitely will become more competitive going forward. And we kind of keep the ball rolling with that into step 4, and we keep trying to connect with our ideal client. And definitely don't be scared to reach out to a potential prospect. If someone looks like they would benefit from your services, introduce yourself. Make sure you don't reach out and say something like, "Boy, it looks like you could sure use some personal training." That's probably not going to go over very well. Try to connect with them on a common interest or something on their Instagram profile. Like maybe they have a cool dog or something. I don't know. Use your imagination. Obviously more goes into this, but yeah, remember you miss every shot you don't take. Step 5 is realize that selling isn't really selling, but you'll still have to sell your prospects eventually. To sell someone, really what you need to do is demonstrate your value and then form a connection with that prospect. If you're able to do both of those two things with prospects, you don't have to sell anything. And the last step is to get your virtual clients some good results and to use their success to gain more clients. So you should try and get before and after pictures from your virtual clients, obviously your in-person clients too. You should post before and afters on Instagram and Facebook. You don't want to do these kinds of posts all the time, but use them because they are very effective when you do post them. If you get your in-person or virtual clients good results, they're also going to be way more likely to refer other people to you. And referrals can be really good in virtual training because in this case, you don't only have to rely on local referrals. You could get a client really good results locally and they could refer somebody who lives in the opposite side of the country who could then do virtual training with you. So this one is very big with all of personal training, but potentially even bigger with virtual personal training. We recently did a video on how to get online coaching or online personal training clients. Virtual personal training and online personal training are different, but you would still use the same steps as in this video to get virtual personal training clients. You just have to make small changes to the process, like changing up your hashtags. So if you want a greater explanation on this whole process, make sure to check out this video right here. So let's now cover some strategies that you should implement while doing virtual personal training sessions. My first strategy that's worked really well in virtual sessions is to really utilize time under tension. You won't have as many weights to choose from in your virtual sessions compared to your in-person sessions. But of course, in these virtual sessions, we still want to fatigue our clients' muscles so they can achieve progressive overload. I especially like to increase the time of the eccentric portion of the lift, like we see here with floor presses. You should also utilize plyometric exercises when and where they make sense. Only do these exercises for clients that they are safe for. If you're unsure whether or not jumping exercises would be safe for your client to do, it's probably better to not do them. But when used responsibly, they can be really good to make the difficulty of your workout go up with no equipment. You should also be willing to do more reps for certain exercises than you would compared to what you'd be doing in an in-person session. Your virtual clients typically aren't going to have heavy weights, so don't be scared to go past your normal rep ranges. You're going to have to chase the burn for some of those exercises, and you should still try to make those last few reps hard whenever possible. On a similar note, consider doing extra sets of exercises to achieve muscular fatigue as well. My last piece of advice for virtual sessions is to be adaptive and creative. Oftentimes I end up using household items like chairs, tables, or a set of stairs to do certain exercises. Don't be scared to introduce some household items into your virtual sessions to make things harder or just to switch things up a little bit. Some of your clients are still going to come into your virtual sessions with their typical weekend warrior things, like a sore back or sore knees or whatever really. So just like with in-person training, be ready to work around those things. This can be a little bit more challenging in virtual sessions because again, you do have less equipment to work with, but it is still very doable, and I would argue that being adaptable is super important for a personal trainer working anywhere, but virtually, it's probably more important than ever. Some other quick tips to consider when virtual training are to ask your client for a front and side angle when doing most exercises. Also show them a front and side view of yourself when you're demonstrating that exercise. FaceTime, Zoom, Skype, and all other software seem to all work well for virtual training. My sessions are identical regardless of which software I use. There's been a few instances now where I've been training a client and they're using their phone, and they'll kind of prop their cell phone up against a box or something, and the acoustics against that cardboard box will be so bad that I won't be able to hear them properly, or they won't be able to hear me properly. Yeah, it's just not good. This sort of thing has actually happened to me now a few times with different clients. So if you're having a hard time hearing or seeing your client, don't be scared to ask them to move their phone or laptop to a different location. Again, in my experience, I've run into more issues with FaceTime because clients will often prop their phones up with things that ruin the audio quality. That's all we have for today, everyone. With online personal training and virtual personal training both getting more popular over time, I think there's a good chance that we'll be revisiting these topics going forward. Have any of you guys done virtual personal training yet? If so, do you have any strategies to add to this virtual personal training guide? Don't be a stranger, let me know down in the comments. And if you haven't liked the video yet or subscribed to the channel, please consider doing so because it does help the channel to grow, allowing me to make more free content for all of you. Thanks for watching, everyone. Stay sorta healthy.